Dartmoor National Park is an area of outstanding natural beauty. Covering 400 square miles, it boasts stark and beautiful moors, majestic granite tors, and of course, the iconic Dartmoor Pony. I have been lucky enough to live on the edge of Dartmoor most of my life. It is an amazing piece of the English countryside. Covering 400 square miles, it was one of the first national parks to be designated in Britain in 1951. The land is owned by a number of landowners, and there are tenant farmers and commoners who are able to graze their sheep and ponies on the moor. There are very few fences, and the land has open access to anyone. Like most people living in the area, we walk our dogs on the moor almost every day, and a number of people ride their own horses across the moor. Dartmoor is one of the main tourist destinations in Devon, with huge numbers of visitors from both Britain and abroad visiting to wonder at the natural features of the granite tors, as well as walk and cycle through the landscape, and of course, get a sight of a wild Dartmoor pony. The ponies have lived on Dartmoor for as long as man has been attempting to tame this wild, rugged landscape. The oldest record of ponies on Dartmoor dates back to the year 1012, and even in the 19th century the ponies were still being used as pack horses, as it was almost impossible to pull carts over the rough Dartmoor terrain and boggy tracks. Until as recently as the 1950s, before widespread use of machinery and modern transport, the ponies were used to move goods, as a way of getting across the moor, and for farm work. Nowadays they no longer have a use other than as riding ponies for children. Around 3,000 ponies now roam freely on the moor. They are well adapted to the habitat, being able to graze on the nutrient-poor, fibre-rich grass, and withstand cold, wet winters and barren summers. The Dartmoor ponies are an essential part of conserving the moorland habitat and the species that rely on it. Only the ponies are able to eat the gorse. The sheep on the moor are not adapted to eat the tough, prickly gorse due to having no upper incisors. Without the ponies grazing on the gorse, there would be a greater need for swaling, a form of controlled burning that is used to manage the gorse and keep it from taking over the moorland. Swaling is still used in small areas to keep down the gorse. As each year passes, and with no real use for the ponies, the moors are naturally becoming overcrowded. Culling has been used as a form of wildlife management for years. However, it does nothing to permanently fix the population problem, hence the reason it must be carried out annually. A local knackerman has found a market for culled ponies in the form of the local zoos.
I'm Benjamin Mee and I'm CEO at Dartmoor Zoo. Well, when we first arrived here at Dartmoor Zoo, there was a long history of using mixed meat but beef from farmers. We entered into a relationship with a knackerman who works on the moor, who helped come up with this scheme to conserve the Dartmoor pony by using them as zoo meat. And so we came up with this idea that if we take a regular amount of the herd every year, possibly 10–15%, and make sure it's the old and the weak, the inbred and the non-purebred Dartmoors. So we take those animals consistently and pay the farmers slightly above the market rate for that. And that ended up giving us a great meat supply here for our carnivores, who all prefer the pony meat to beef. It's better for them, it's more like the protein they would catch in the wild. And then we've also managed to export that to some other zoos in Devon. It means that of the 1,000 or so ponies on the moor, that herd is predated by about 10 lions, 2 or 3 packs of wolves, several other carnivores, and some bears, which is how it would be in the wild. And I love that, the fact that this is nature in action. I mean, you can't release those predators onto Dartmoor because that would be mayhem, but that is a natural thing, and it is working quite well at the moment. At the zoo, we've noticed there's a difference between individual tigers' meat consumption, and it can go from about 3 kilograms every other day to up to 13 kilograms every other day, but they tend to average at around 5 kilos each. The wolves here at the zoo eat quite a lot of meat. We've got 2 groups of wolves, 2 pairs of 3. We've got the jaguar. The bears are omnivorous, but they also like some meat. We've got 2 African lions and 3 Siberian tigers. So there are a lot of carnivores, but we also give meat to the otters and a couple of the other smaller animals. Here at the zoo we've got a very large freezer, which is sort of walk-in, where you can store several months' supply of meat for the carnivores. There are 2 processing rooms as well. One looks like a kind of shop of horrors with huge hydraulic cutting implements which can, just cut through legs and things and saw a carcass straight down the middle. and that's very specialised equipment which only the knackerman uses. And then just outside the freezer there's a sort of what we call the clean room, where the blocks of meat are made into smaller sections depending on the needs of the individual animals. So it's quite a big facility, bigger than in most zoos. The way we feed the meat to the animals is quite varied, and again we try and keep it as natural as possible, because part of a tiger's natural feeding cycle, for instance, is to lick the skin off the carcass, so we tend to keep the skin and fur on. We do tell the public about the Dartmoor Conservation Scheme because I think it's important people understand that if you're going to keep carnivores, you need to feed them meat, and it's a very effective and viable conservation scheme for managing the herd on the moor. Well, there's a saying, if you want to save it, eat it, and it certainly applies to this breed of Dartmoor Pony, because if we weren't using it for consumption of by the carnivores, their future's in peril, because there's a big debate about what animals get the most money out of the moor, and we're helping to show that they have a valuable place in the ecosystem. Eating something means that there's money in it for someone, so they'll look after it, and that's the key dynamic. At the moment, the farmers are financially incentivised to look after the pony and participate in this scheme, and that's good for the pony.
Ponies have been part of the identity of Dartmoor for hundreds of years. Without them grazing the moor, the landscape would be changed forever, and it simply wouldn't be Dartmoor without seeing the ponies.